Yeah, hi. This is the fourth and last in a series of videos I'm doing about the Microsoft Surface Pro 3. If you haven't seen the other three videos, are on my channel. This should all be in a playlist. First video is about this. What is it about? The heat and noise issues, which is really a big question for a lot of people. Then I talk a long time about the hardware, and in the third video, I talk about the screen and the pen here. In this fourth one, I intend to talk about software, a little bit about Windows, a bit about drivers, a bit about scaling and rendering, rendering in different browsers as well. We'll have a quick look at that. Now, this should be the shortest video. One quick comment about my webcam, because my crummy old Logitech I'm so sick of. I decided, and someone said I should have a go at using my Lumia 920, so I'm doing that. And I've got nothing to put it in. So I'm hand holding it just above the screen with my left hand, and I'm talking at it, just looking at the back and talking at it. And it's obviously the white balance and the focus is going to be all over the place. It'll probably jump around, but it'll probably be a lot better than the Logitech. So plus it'll be 1080p, which will be quite nice as well. So we'll see how this goes. If it's too wobbly, I won't put it up. If you're watching this, then I didn't think it was too wobbly. Okay, now the software. This is really about, I guess I don't have to talk a lot about Windows. Don't have to talk about Windows 8.1. There's zillions of videos on YouTube. Most of you are already using Windows 8 or 8.1. You've decided that you like it or that you don't like it. Doesn't really matter. I like it. I'm happy with it. It doesn't confuse me. I can cope with the idea that this is the start menu and that the desktop doesn't have its own separate start menu, because the old start menu, as far as I'm concerned, was rubbish. The old one from Windows 95 was never good, and so anything was better than that. This, to me, was a great improvement on that. And the fact that you can customize it as you like, plus it shows information, what could be better than that? Real nice. Of course, it works by far best on a touchscreen device. It's not so great on a desktop, and I have to say my desktop computer, I tend to use it, my big desktop, I tend to use it just with icons on the taskbar. I pin icons there. I have some on the start screen, some on the taskbar. And the one thing I've noticed that Windows 8 does is, instead of having a little pop-up menu, a little tree menu that you have to hunt around, that most people I support don't even know it's there or how to use it. That's the trouble with the old menu. That has everything on it. In new Windows, it forces you to sort of decide what's important to you and put it up front. And so you end up with the programs that you actually do use on your taskbar. And it turns out to be far fewer programs that are actually installed. And so that's interesting. I find it a much cleaner way to work. On my tablets, again, you just have the things you use a lot in one area. Other people might want to organize it in columns. You can do all that. Do whatever you want, really. But the main thing is it's totally customizable, which is great. And plus it shows information, which I like too. Being a Windows Phone user, of course, I think live tiles are great. I'd like to have more of them. I'd like to see more in them. I wish they could do even more than they do. So I quite like them. Of course, we've got Windows 10 just around the corner, and you can download that and see what it's like. I have not done that because this is a working device. It's not for messing around with. And I will just, let Microsoft finish that, release it, and use it. From what I can see, they're keeping the same system. They're adding the start menu back. They're sort of blurring the lines between what the Metro UI and the desktop is, and I find that a little bit problematic. I think this is like this with a lot of Microsoft products. The first release is often very pure, like they had some designer who was very good, had some good ideas, work on Windows Phone, and that person clearly worked on Windows 8, and I thought had some nice, clean, pure ideas about UI. Then obviously the marketing people get hold of it and decide, well, the bloggers don't like this, they don't like that, no one can cope without the start menu and so on, and so they just start shoehorning all the old stuff back in again. And it's what they've done with Windows Phone, and they've done it with they're doing it now with this Windows 8 as well, 8.1. Overall, I don't really care. It doesn't really matter. Windows is still Windows. I use Windows because of the applications and the games and so on that it runs, not because it's Windows. I'm not that interested in operating systems per se. This is just the one that runs everything I want to run, so that's why I have it, and it does it perfectly well. Doesn't matter what state it's in. And obviously I like the Metro UI, so I like this. I also like the Metro apps. I use this mail on my tablet all the time. I don't really bother with Outlook on this tablet, even though of course it's got full Outlook on it. Come on, close. There we go. Tell you what, that's a point about the bigger screen on this device. Some of the actions that are quite sort of short on a smaller tablet are much longer. Dragging from top to bottom is longer. Reaching over to the left to swipe an app in is much longer. Things like that are quite different, just because of the bigger screen. But overall, I love the touchscreen, love Windows 8, so much so that I'm constantly fingering my desktop screen all the time. I'm touching it. And when I go out with people and look with clients, and usually we're discussing things sitting at a desk at a cafe looking at a MacBook Pro or a MacBook Air or something like that, and I'm always touching the screen. I'm always reaching up and trying to scroll, trying to push buttons and so on. And that's quite amusing. It shows just how useful it becomes and how used to it one becomes. And when it's not there, I miss it. I expect to be able to hit the screen at any time and have it do something. And so I do miss that on computers that haven't got touch. Can't wait till they'll do a 30-inch ultra-sharp touch screen. I'll be in for that. Okay, and so really, I guess, as I was saying, everyone's done Windows to death. I think of interest to people on the Surface Pro 3 perhaps is, I guess I read some people who do reviews, they like to use the device only as a desktop computer. And they hate Metro. They don't want to touch it. They just use this. Okay, well, that's fine. You probably don't even need a tablet. Just get a laptop. You're going to do that. Me, I do actually like the Metro UI. I keep calling it Metro because I thought that was a great name. And when I look for an app or a program or something I'm going to do, I go to the Windows Store first. I go in there, I see if it's available. If it is available and it's workable, I'll use that because I do like using the apps on this screen. Especially, being able to snap apps is nice, do that there, go there, bring up another thing, bring up some shares, I'll do that and watch things like that. And then I might switch over, quite typically go to Reddit, drop that in one side, and over here I might change it to, what do I often do? That's what I do. I very often just fire up a YouTube video. That's what I'll do. Have a YouTube on the other side, something like that. And while I'm playing Scrabble or reading Reddit, I'll sit there like that, and you can actually have a video running. I mean, it's a bit weird having the video running, using up an entire column, but playing a video just in the corner. But it's all right. It's good enough for now. Hopefully, and I notice in Windows 10 or something, they're going to let you divide the screen in more angles. Maybe that'll be nice. But then again, if you really need to do that, you can always go to the desktop and just do that there. Because, of course, you can just, work like a normal desktop machine. And overall, I think it works pretty well as a desktop computer. Certainly works better than old Windows, than 7 and XP worked. Those were very usable with a pen. Obviously, they didn't have touch back then. There were a few screens that were resistive. You could get some that had a resistive screen and pen way back then on Windows XP tablet PC, but they were quite odd screens. Required a little bit of pressure, but like an old Pocket PC they were. But otherwise they were really made for pens, and so this is not. And so because it's not, this thing is constantly trying to figure out what you're doing. So here I'm on the home screen. I can drag my palm around. It doesn't work, doesn't do anything. Then I might touch something, and that is meant to work. And then here again, it doesn't work, and it's not meant to. Let me turn that off. Strange looking person. And so here, again, if you put your hand on it like this, it's not meant to do anything. But it's interesting here. So you'll have my hand on this, and then I'll put my finger down. So I've got my whole palm on this. Put my finger down here and scroll. See, that's quite interesting, isn't it? You can put your hand on the device and be resting. Then you can reach out with a finger and scroll while your hand is still on it. If you put just a finger on it and reach out and scroll, you'll probably start doing this, stretching it. Whereas if you're like this and do that, it won't stretch it because it knows this is your palm. And it knows it because you do this, because of things like, how big is the area that you're touching it with. And so you might find, here's another example of this. You put your thumb down on it here like this. I'm putting my thumb down, I'm trying to scroll. This might happen if you're in bed and you're sitting there going, oh, go to the next page. And you're going, why doesn't it bloody change? What's wrong here? It doesn't change. So it doesn't go up and down. But then if you just move your thumb like that, it goes up and down. And it's simply how much of your finger or thumb is touching it. So if I touch with my finger like that, it's not going up and down. Oops, I just touched it with my knuckle just then, and it did. But yeah, if you use a broad area, it doesn't detect it, is the point. If you use a small area, it detects it and goes up and down. So things like that are interesting. And you get used to those. Once you figure out what it's doing, you can sort of predict what it's going to do, because it's usually trying to do something smart, is the point. And on this program here, the Windows button doesn't really touch. I'm not hitting it. It's not doing anything, you see. But if I go like that and touch it, of course it does. If I go like that, it doesn't. And here on a page like this, let me just bring up something like daily rotation. Go to the screen, and so this is neat. You can scroll around like this, scroll like that. I'm touching the screen, I'm resting on it, and I can scroll, and then I can go, oh, I like that one. Select it with the pen, and do a mouse operation on it. Copy the link, select some text there, do that sort of thing. Scroll around, and you see, so it's doing multiple things, different things here, and it's smart enough to try and figure out what I'm doing or what I want to do, and then it'll do it. So that's pretty cool. That is certainly a vast improvement over tablet PCs from 10 years ago, and so Windows 8 does really well in that regard. One point, though, about this is it's doing it well now. There's been a gradual improvement to this since this device has been out. It wasn't this good when it came out. It's just been getting better and better. Each driver update or ROM update, I don't read what's in them every time, but there have been quite a few, and things are getting better and better and better in the way this works. So that's really nice. Things are improving overall. And this used to touch all the time. I used to hit it all the time, and it would change back to the start menu. And as you can see now, it doesn't. And so that's great. There are some apps where it does. And so I think it may also be an app choice. The app can decide whether or not that should be sensitive or not. Don't know. And so I quite like that. That works well. Yeah, and I particularly like this whole system, going back and forth. This is now fast enough. Again, on the original Windows 8 devices, this was too slow, this thing where it takes a screenshot and lets you scroll, go back and forth the page. That's now fast. And of course with, the Surface Pro, it's very fast because the computer is also fast. So it can not only load the page, but also render it quite quickly. So that's really nice to use and fast. And I get very quick with this. I do find there's a bit of a disconnect, though, in these gestures. The browser one in particular, you see it treats apps like this. You go app, sorry, launch an app, launch news, launch a bunch of apps. And you swap between them here, like this. Right, and that's nice, works well. It's a bit of a pain that you have to go all the way over to the left to do it. because it's a bit of a stretch for someone who's, if you're only working with your right hand. But what the hell, it works. And now what I was going to say was when you're using a browser, that whole method breaks. And this is, I find, a little bit problematic, because then when you have a browser and you want to launch another, oops, my battery is critically low. Damn. Let me just plug the problems with using your phone to record a video. Here we go. Okay, I'm just plugging it into the USB here on my screen. There we go. That's still going? Yes, it's still going. Okay, sorry about that. Once you're using a browser, so normally you do this to get around the place, swap tasks and so on, but when you're in the browser, you're not. All of a sudden, you've got multiple windows you have to swipe, you got to add a thing there, you know, you got to add another tab. And I guess it's the problem between what's a tab and what's a window. And I find that I could certainly get mixed up between the two. I want to go to another page or something, and I have to go down here for it. I've got to find it down here. That's the other thing, not there. As if I do that, I get the previous page of the tab, things like that. So the browser doesn't really fit the way the rest of Windows works. Now, I thought that was actually slightly better in pre-tab days. Back in Windows XP, when tabs, I don't know if people who are old enough to remember when tabs became all the rage, because someone like Firefox added tabs, and so everyone had to have tabs. Back then, I had the view that Windows itself already had tabs, that was the idea. The desktop, Windows XP, had this bar here, down the bottom, and it had tabs. And you had options. You could group similar taskbar buttons or whatever, but the point was each tab was a different function. So if that's your Word doc, there's your one, your news page, there's another Google search page, and there's an Excel spreadsheet, and so on. They were all buttons for doing different things. And it didn't see that two completely different browser pages were the same thing just because they were browser pages. Yet that is what tabs do. They force all those things to be a single button. You go into the program, and then you have tabs. And I never quite bought into that, but it became the fad. That's what you had to do. And so, I sort of buy into it for programs like Photoshop, where you're working on a Photoshop file, particular file type. But this browsers, they're often completely different things. And so I quite like treating them as separate things. And I wouldn't mind if swiping in would bring in different browser tabs, you see, like that. If it brought in the different browser windows, I wouldn't mind that. That would work for me. Doesn't. Another thing I find slightly goofy about this, I'm used to IE Metro, it's all right, but I don't think this interface is quite right. So that one thing about switching tabs could be the swipe. But of course they've used that for the back and forth, so maybe it doesn't work for that. I also think that here, this button here for adding tabs is a pain. What they should really do is see how these tabs have close buttons there? All they need to do is have sort of a blank tab right there. And if you want to add a tab, you just tap that. And there's your tab, And then when that one's there, another one shows up there. So you can just tap to add tabs like that. And that would be a lot smarter. This thing's a pain. It's too small. Not even crazy about a lot of these little buttons, because I still find myself today even looking at them going, what does that mean? Find on page. That's with the find on page. But then what about that one? New private tab, reopen close tab. So I don't know. Who knows what the logic is amongst all these things. And then there's the favorites one. This is more tabs. I'm pretty sure that's more tabs. Come on. That is the tabs. I'm not really sure, but I'm not entirely crazy about these little buttons and so on. I think they work on phones maybe because of the limited space, but here buttons can be a bit more informative. So I find the UI with Windows 8. A little bit confusing, just because the main programs, IE, and then the other programs don't really work the same way. And so that's a little bit jarring. I find that more jarring than the shift from Metro to the desktop, which I don't find jarring at all, but some people obviously do. For me, it's really clear. There's the desktop. That's what we always used. And everything else is in the Metro UI, which is great for tablets. And so, for example, on my desktop, I never use Metro, just never use it. I'll use the start menu sometimes, never use Metro apps. But here on the tablet, I do. It's funny now how they show up here. You can stop them showing up here. And it's a bit weird, though, that they show up there. Because they're not quite the same. They haven't got the jump lists like IE does, like the desktop programs. They haven't got that. So they're not quite desktop programs, but now they're here as if they are. And in Windows 10, you're going to be able to put them on the desktop and resize them, and they become little windows. Well, that's getting a bit weird to me. Ultimately, that should all be one thing, and I guess this sort of forces that case where ultimately there's one screen where everything happens. And so people writing old programs will start to make them work better in that environment, and people writing apps will make theirs work in that environment. It sort of merges it all together. And, it solves that problem with having solves that problem that Apple has where you've got iOS and you've got OS X, the next desktop, and there's really no connection between them in terms of the flow, the UI. There's they're going to have to throw one away or merge them. And as far as merging goes, they're a long way behind in that. And so this sort of forces the point. It merges the two, no matter what. It's just going to happen. The problem's going to be like, well, say when you're getting Skype, do you get the Metro one? And do you have that sitting in a window here on the desktop, or do you get the desktop one? Well, the desktop one has a heck of a lot more going for it in terms of functionality and buttons and menus and things. There's a hell of a lot more going for it. So which one is it going to be, the dumbed down version or the fancy version? How are programmers and developers going to distinguish between those? Or would the same app change when it shows on the desktop and become another app when it shows on the Metro, simplified and then complicated? Who knows? A lot of questions around how this is going to work. But in any case, in future, this is all sort of coming together a lot more, for better or for worse. So this thing here, some of you may have noticed that I have my taskbar here on the side. On my desktop, I actually run it at the top on my desktop computer. Always have. Since Windows 95 days, I've had it up there because, quite simply, in programs, that's where the menus are. They're at the top. And so I always move the bar up there. That's where my mouse is. It didn't make a lot of sense to me to do everything up there and then have to come all the way down to the bottom to do something else. It was nice to have everything up there. And Windows always let you do that, have your buttons up top. It's nice and customizable. And so here, though, I quite like using it on the side because I'm often holding it like this. And holding it and then having to go up there or even down here to do something is a bit of a pain. But if you do this, then you can use your, you can use the jump lists. So you can launch a program, usually close it up there. You can access your jump lists like that. Or if the program is open, you can access it and go to different tabs or whatever and so on and so forth and close it like that. And so that's quite neat to be able to do that. One copy of Explorer, flip it open, open another copy like that, and close it. And of course, get to that menu as well. So that's quite neat. I quite like doing that. And when you have it here, you can also do things like you can adjust the width. Yeah, like that, to however wide you want it. You can change the size of the buttons and so on. And I keep it as small as possible. And then you can lock it just by going lock the taskbar. There's a lot of options. I mean, most of you will know this, but sorry if I go over this. But there's a lot of options in here, by the way, under Properties for your taskbar. Locking it, hiding it, using small or large buttons, showing Windows Store apps on it. But also jump lists. Usually I increase those. I haven't done that yet on this. But on my desktop I've got 30 programs on my jump list. I like nice long jump lists, and they're at the top on a big screen, so I can, look at a jump list and get a list of 30 recent programs that I've used, which is generally everything I'm working on on a given day, so it's quite nice and nice to have. So that's worth looking at, that area, properties of the taskbar. Also worth noting, if you're new to this and you haven't sort of read anything about it, right-clicking on the Start button gives you shortcuts to some things that are otherwise a bit fiddly to find. Control panel, Task Manager, another copy of Explorer, Search, whatever. You can shut it down from there as well. Device Manager, if you're still looking at that sort of thing. So that's quite nice as well, as it's just a right-click on the Start button, and you get all those. One thing I noticed too is that if you do that, and you're using touch, you're not using a pointer like that, you might be thinking it's sort of a bit hard to point at things, and you might miss things because they're quite small. And so I find instead of trying to point at it and hit it and accidentally hitting the wrong one, what you can do is when you've got a menu like this, just go straight on it, put your finger on it and start dragging. You see, and if you're doing that, you're dragging around, you can see which one you've got selected, and then just drag it to the one you want and let go. And that's more accurate. It's just a bit easier to do. So you bring up a menu and you go, oh, which thing do I want? Oh, File Explorer. There we go. So you do it like that. That's quite nice to do. Just a little tip. Okay, what else? I have also been using this little program here. Just bring my phone down. This thing here, I'll just see who makes it. I've forgotten. Who makes that? What does it say? Touch Mouse Pointer by Love Summer True. Okay, Touch Mouse Pointer by Love Summer True. Go to lovesummertrue.com and grab that, the Touch Mouse Pointer. It's a great little app. Microsoft should just include this functionality because it is very cool, and takes a little bit of figuring out, but what it does is you tap it, and in this particular mode where I'm using it right now, there's a mouse pointer now, right there. See? And what it does, it now treats whatever area of the screen I touch, treats it like a touchpad on a tablet. So if I start touching here in this corner, that mouse pointer, I can control where it is on the screen, but with the kind of control that you have with a touchpad. So moving just an inch makes it move several inches. And so you can go all the way all around the screen with that pointer. And you have the same sort of precision that you have with a touchpad without having to have a touchpad. And you've always got a corner of the screen here that you can touch. And so this works quite well. You can right-click by I think it's double tapping. I was using this earlier, so can't remember what I did. I did something. Let me try it on the desktop. Oh no, that's of course. Sorry, duh. Okay, to right click, you tap with your other finger, like that. Okay, so it's as if you're on the trackpad, and then you use your other finger to hit the right mouse button. That's how you do it. And also, again, just like a trackpad, so say you open Windows Explorer. If you want to drag the title bar around, you move the pointer onto it, double tap, and you can move it around, just like with a trackpad, you see? So that's very cool. And the best thing I've used this for, the thing I really wanted this for, sorry, I got to get used to that, is the remote desktop, which I use to get to my server, the remote desktop app. Because when you're on your remote desktop, it's very dangerous. It's very risky to be using touch and dragging things around because it's laggy, it's across a network, it's your whole business, is sitting there, and with the, if you accidentally do something wrong with your finger, you can drag a whole website into another website's folder, which is not very good. And so this gives me a whole lot more precision on the remote desktop without having to have my keyboard and my touchpad, which of course would be the same, but I like that. That works really well. But even better is you can just turn it off so easily. You just touch that, and then it's off. It's gone. So that's gone. You turn it on like that. There it is. Tap that to turn it off, and it's gone again. You get that sort of visual sort of cue that it's turning on or off, which is quite nice. So very cool, touch mouse pointer, and great to use. Another big issue here with Windows is scaling. I touched upon this briefly in one of the previous videos. I talked about it, and I'm going to talk about it here again because just a couple of tips. Say here in Internet Explorer, say you go to a typical site like Ars Technica, and this website here, this is built around 960 pixels, which is the typical sort of website width that is common to build a website at. It fits nicely in an iPad at that size. Fits nicely in a 1024 screen if it's about 960 for your paper content. But when you get one of these computers, by default, it doesn't actually look like that. It actually looks like this. Go to your options, go to your zoom, and I think it's down about 125 right there. 125% on the zoom. That's where it sits. And so when you first get this computer, you might go to most sites and find that they're sitting there like this. This is what happens. And it's not very efficient. It looks a bit silly, especially when the iPad next to you runs them full screen. And so the solution there is to scale. And Metro IE will scale separately from everything else. It's got its own scaling right here. So you can set this zoom, 200% is what I use it at. Plonk, right there, it goes up in 25s. If you put it at 200, you get full screen. So that gives you nice reading. Good, nice width. You're basically using the whole width of the display for the browser for reading. So that's really nice, and I recommend doing that on the Metro Internet Explorer. These other programs, you should always have a look in your Metro programs. Swipe to the right, go to settings, and then see what there is up there, because they don't usually have a lot of options, but some of them do. And when they do, it's worth checking out. This reading view here is very, very useful. It's on Windows Phone, and it's fantastic. And it's also here on Metro IE. And what that does is you go to, let's look at the worst design thing ever. I didn't say that. Ars Technica said that. So there we go. We'll go here. And if we find that it's too hard to read for whatever reason, you can go down here and click reading mode, this button. It shows when the page is loaded. So you go there, bang. And what it does, it re-renders the page, all the text, like this, and the pictures, and it just makes it all nice and clean and easy to read. In particular, the ads are usually not in there. I'm not sure if that's an ad or not. No, that's the BlackBerry music player. So you see how that works? It's quite nice. And something else that this does, if you read stock news, most of which is garbage, but if you do read stock news, and I'll just show you an example of typical stock news stories. So let me just go to one of these worthless websites, like let's try Value Walk. I'll show you what happens. These websites always come up with overlays, modal overlays, getting you to sign up and so on. This one, I can see it's not bringing it up, but what happens either on the first page or sometimes on the next page, you get this modal overlay that comes up. The reading mode, very conveniently, gets rid of that. So you don't have to type in your name and address and so on. You can just switch to reading mode. You get the text and the content and the images nicely laid out and legible, and bypasses the other junk. So that probably won't last, but it's nice while it's there, so I quite like that. Well worth doing. Not sure what else about IE to go on about. Apart from that, it's great. Now, looking at my notes about this the software, I wanted to also say, if you've bought a Surface Pro, you must go into the desktop control panel, up here, and you must go to Windows Update there. I recommend going in here, checking for updates after you've got it. Do it, get whatever it gives you, come back and do it again after the restart, and do it a third time as well, just to make sure you've got everything. I have found that the Metro version of the updater, well, in the past, I don't know if it's changed, but in the past I found that this version here doesn't pick up all the same stuff. This doesn't pick it all up, and so I recommend just going through to the desktop for your first Windows updates. Do it there, and then just leave it on automatic. Okay. Something else that has been a major drama with this computer, Wi-Fi. Oh my God, Wi-Fi. So Wi-Fi here, there's very few on where I live here now, but when I go downtown, of course, this fills up. Now, I've got a 4-story house here, and my kitchen's down the bottom. I go down and cook, and I take either my phone or my RT tablet, my Surface RT or whatever with me, and if I'm making dinner, I'll stand it up on the edge, and I'll have it playing something, or I'll watch something or read something while I'm waiting and so on, play some Scrabble while I'm killing time down there, and do whatever. My Wi-Fi router is up here on this floor with me. So by the time I get downstairs, the signal is weaker. Never been a problem. Not until I got this device. This device just did not work in the kitchen. I'd go down there, I'd turn something on, go to YouTube, put on a video, and it just wouldn't load. It would just sit there, wouldn't pick it up. Real pain in the butt. Eventually I sort of realized, I could actually sometimes get a bit of a signal if I lifted it up like this, and it would sometimes work. Had the impression that being flat on the bench somehow blocked it just enough. Don't know. Tried everything, and then eventually, you will read about people going on about Wi-Fi problems, and one of the recent software updates brought in this fix about negotiating, for the fastest connection speed and so on and so forth, which apparently it wasn't doing after a restart, blah, 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 blah. I had seen that bug. I didn't think that it applied to me, but it did. The bug I was having was actually that, because now it works. Now it works in the kitchen. And the weird thing about it is when it didn't work, you see, there was always good strength. I'd always get half of the bars, like 3 bars would be there. And so that's the irritating thing. There's plenty of signal strength, but it just didn't work. It never said disconnect it. It just wouldn't work. And so that was a real pain. That's now fixed. And so I'm finding a lot of things, the pen, the hardware, the wireless drivers and so on, have come right with software updates. So that's been really good. It's nice to have a device where the manufacturer is releasing stuff. I think by the time they make the Surface Pro 4, that'll be the device to get, really. That'll be the one to get. Things will be well ironed out, so maybe there'll be a whole lot of new issues, don't know. Regarding this thing here, I think I've said previously, I'm constantly coming in here and using the brightness, just constantly. Use that all the time. I wish that was out here on the screen, or maybe as a button, or maybe the volume could be reassigned to that or something, because, that's the one action I do all the time, is that. The other buttons in there, the volume, I don't tend to use. The second most common thing I do is use the wireless, because I go in there and I might hook up to a cafe or something. And those are the 2 things I constantly do there. I'm just providing that as feedback, just in case anyone from Microsoft ever looks at these things. See, things I definitely never do on a regular basis is turn it off and search. But I do understand the need to move search out here, because this here was just too complicated for people. In fact, this whole menu is too complicated for people. I like it, but people can't cope with that, so they have to have, some of these things on the screen. Well, I'll tell you what, the things I'd like to see there would be the brightness and the Wi-Fi. Those I would use. These I don't use. So that's my comment on those. Desktop scaling is something else entirely. When you get this, you have choices about how you're going to set it up, set up the screen. I'm sorry if this is getting a bit green to look at. You're probably sick of staring at the screen thing. But you have a lot of choices around your screen resolution, obviously, and your scaling. Now, of course, the screen resolution, you'd normally leave it at the maximum all the time. You wouldn't normally reduce that, but you could. It does work. You know, you can change your scaling by changing that. But you've also got down here, make text and other items larger or smaller. And when you go in there, you've got various options, changing the size of all items, smaller or larger, and then change the text size only. See, now this has changed. This has changed since I last, let me just check here. Custom sizing options. Okay, this used to have a setting. This used to have a different setting, which is now gone. Oh well, this is now these are now the only options. Fine, great. Okay. And this option here lets you either this one here does it changes the size of everything, or if you tick that, you can change it for all your displays at once. I am aware that some people have trouble getting different scaling on different screens if they're using multiple screens. Obviously, I'm not using multiple screens, so I haven't had a problem. But in any case, I use this size here, the 150%. It makes things quite small, but you know, I do like to have a lot of stuff on screen. I like to use the pixels for what they are, pixels. You know, get more stuff on screen, not just have more pixels per item, but have more items on screen. So I use that setting there and find it pretty good for the desktop. It can be hard on the eyes a bit, but it's like using an iPad. If you use an iPad happily, then you can use this nicely. It's certainly a lot higher, not finer than I use the Metro UI. When I switch over to this, whoa, all of a sudden everything's big. But then, you know, that's how I like to use that. It's a different thing. Okay, I've been rambling on here a little bit, so I will just quickly check my notes. I guess the point I was making is that I've got a whole list of things here that I noted. And what I've found is that since I started making these notes, many of these things have been fixed. That's what's happened. A lot of them have been fixed, and so I really don't have anything to complain about for quite a few of them. The Wi-Fi is fixed. The scrolling and the touch of the buttons and so on, that's sort of all fixed and works well. That's really good. The fan heat and battery noise, that was all good on mine anyway, but that would also be fixed for some people with some driver updates. So get your computer up to date. Oh, gaming. I guess as part of this software discussion, there's gaming. And now I did say in my last video, one of them, I said I haven't really put anything on here. I've got Steam on this, but I didn't use it. So let's just try. I'll just show you something, just for fun. We'll spend the last 5 minutes doing this. So, Steam, which is there. This is desktop Steam. Sorry for all the wobbling, but my hand has been holding this camera now for 43 minutes. Okay, there's Steam, and it's not signed in, you piece of junk. Okay. Let me just quickly find something. Oh dear. Okay, here we go. I'm just pulling up my password. Is that my password? Okay, well, I'm just going to move this away to there while I pull up the keyboard. I gave you this tip earlier, I think I mentioned in the last video as well. A password uses keys and the patterns on the keyboard, and so what I like to do is switch over to this keyboard here, which is like a traditional keyboard layout. And this is much easier if you have passwords that aren't just numbers, aren't just letters, but have all the symbols or might have a pattern that you use or something. And so this is quite useful. And so with the keyboard in this mode, I can type in my password very quickly. So I'm going to do that now. Okay. Where is it? There it is. Login. Log in. Yes, there we go. Then I switch that back to the other keyboard because this keyboard is definitely way better for typing. But a little tip actually, which I only noticed more recently, the numbers up here on those keys, because it's a pain having to switch over to this area here and use the number keys on the right. Just if you're adding numbers to a URL or to a password or something, it's quite handy to do this. You come up here and you type, blah, 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 and then you swipe up. That adds the number. 8, you go like that, and it adds the number. 7 up, 6 up, you just drag upwards, and it puts the number in, which is really cool. Same goes for a lot of these buttons. They actually become something else when you touch them. See, period becomes colon, obviously comma be semicolon, the apostrophe, speech marks, and so on. So that's they're worth, put your finger on and see what they do. It's actually a very nice keyboard. I like it a lot. Okay, just looking at Steam here, which is not a very good touch app. I find it doesn't work very well with touch, but one thing it does do, if I go to my library, it does this. Now I have, how can I do this? I'll just put my keyboard on this. Okay, and snap it up like that. I'm doing that because what we're gonna do is launch a game through Steam using the Steam, in-home streaming sort of system, which is pretty cool. Now, I'm gonna load up now that's interesting. See, Far Cry 4, I was going to load up Far Cry 4, which is the latest and greatest game. In this case, it just says install on this machine. Other games, like Daisy, give me the option to stream. Now I wonder why Far Cry doesn't. Possibly because it's not really a Steam game. It belongs to whatever Ubisoft, Uplay. They have their own system that launches when you launch the game. But that's a bit of a shame. But in any case, I'll just fire up Daisy here. This is the Daisy standalone. I'll show you how that works. Some of you may not be aware that you can do this. Okay, what's happening? There's my desktop computer. Covered with dust. Okay, see that? I'll bring those together. See, the Surface Pro is receiving a video stream over the Wi-Fi from the desktop machine. So Steam will launch the game on your desktop computer where it plays with its proper graphics, and then it'll sample the video and stream it to the Surface. And it does it pretty much like a YouTube stream. It's streaming it as video. It's not rendering it on this. It's just streaming it as video. And it compresses it. And so as your connection quality drops, you get more artifacts. It gets crummier. And but if you have good connection speed, like here, I'm right next to the computer, obviously, it works well. So there's my Daisy character, and there's the game, right? So that's the same game playing. So I can now play this fancy 3D game up here on the Surface. And I can play it with touch. You see that? You can touch it. Play. Oops, I should have changed servers, but doesn't really matter. And so you can see, I'll just show this so you can see both. You can see how quickly it changes. So obviously on the desktop it's going to sort of do something first, and then it'll change here. And so we can see what the lag is like. I'll lift this up, actually. Gosh, my phone just died for some reason. Even though I have it plugged in, all of a sudden it said low battery, and it stopped. So I was just showing you Daisy, the 3D game, streaming from Steam to the Surface Pro 3. And we'll see, I think if I touch the screen it actually shoots the gun, so I'm going to be careful about that. I'll just use the trackpad. So move left. See how the bottom one is slightly behind. Yeah. Oops. And now it's stopped. Oh, yep, now it's caught up again. That's interesting. Just moving my finger on the trackpad. So if you don't look at that screen, if you're only looking at this, things seem okay. You know, I can run around. Come out of the building. I don't even know where I am. Oh, I'm in Electro, lower Electro. So there we go. So there's the game. There's miserable old Electro. I think I might run back inside because I don't want to lose my character out here. Da, 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 da. Okay, I'll run into this room. So there you go. That's all I wanted to show you, was that you can actually play in your house. You can play a game that you have on Steam on your desktop. You can play it in-house on your Surface Pro 3 without installing it. So that's pretty cool. While it's running, you can do all your other stuff. You know, this is back to the browser. Go back to Steam. This is on the desktop, and the game is still there somewhere. See, I've got all these programs open, and somewhere in there is the game. Oh, it's there on the desktop. There it is. Okay, there we go. So that's pretty fun. And I will just close out of that. Oh no, what we're going to do is just switch out of that, go to the desktop here, and let's have a look at the temperature and the CPU thingy. Let me just minimize that, and we'll just launch this thing here. Okay, there it is. So this is telling me that the CPU is at 50 degrees, both cores. Sorry for the brightness, it's probably not really, there we go, not very visible, but so it's telling me the cores are 51 degrees and 54 degrees. The CPU, while I'm tabbed out of the game, is at next to nothing, and the memory is half. And I probably won't be able to see this whilst I'm in the game, but we'll just flip over to the game, go in here, do stuff, and so forth. And see the fan, I'm listening for the fan, and the fan is not on right now. So there you can play a Steam game and the fan doesn't even come on. That's quite an interesting way, and this is probably the future of quite a lot of online gaming, is that, you know, the games will be rendered on some mega system over the internet, and you'll just receive the video stream, and you'll probably pay more for a better stream or something like that. That's what'll happen. And so that's quite neat. It's sorry, shows the future of what's going to happen. 50 degrees, 800 megahertz. So that's not going to throttle. Throttling is irrelevant in this case. The only thing that really matters here is the Wi-Fi speed, and as you can see, that's it's using that up. Yeah, 10 megabits per second. Yeah, 10 megabits per second. So that's the speed it's got here. That's what it's going to use, and it's giving me as best possible frame rate as it can with that. So that's really interesting about the ability to play games like that in the home. Okay, I'll close out of that. Go back to this game. Escape out of it. Exit. Yes. And there we go. That's going to finish. So I will tack this on to the video that just cut off, and we have probably ended up with about an hour of babbling. So thank you all once again for listening, those of you who have made it this far. And I think I've sort of done my dash with the Surface Pro 3. I'm going to keep it until either a Surface Pro 4 comes out, which I'm interested in, because I would like this device even thinner and lighter and cooler. That would be neat. But it's already good enough. This is perfectly good, so I'm quite happy with it. Not sure what's happened here, but my desktop has gone all white. Oh yeah. Okay, that's all finished and come back. So there we go. I think that's the end of all this. Thanks again for watching. If you want to subscribe, upcoming videos will include the Lumia 1020 camera review, which is so long overdue. I can't believe I haven't done that. I've got it on my computer here, just haven't had the time to put it together. So I'll do that. If you have any questions about this, maybe ask in the threads. I try to read them, but I'm really, really tight for time. So once again, thank you for watching. I'll wrap this up now. Okay, bye-bye. Where's the off switch? There we go.